We're Laura and Cindy, and you're listening to the Holistic Horsemanship and Husbandry podcast, where we talk about natural horsekeeping and deepening your connection with your horse. I'm Laura, your horse care mentor. I teach natural horse management practices after working with over 200 horses and seeing how current industry standards are compromising the health of the horse.
And I'm Cindy, your horsemanship mentor, offering a proven and unique approach to creating deep connections with your horses from 20 plus years of experience, including working with wild Mustangs. If you enjoy this conversation, please leave us a 5-star review wherever you're listening to us so we can get this podcast into the ears of more passionate horse people. In this episode, we are talking about the belief that we have to ride our horses. If you have a horse, you have to ride it. I, for one, don't believe that. And the reason that I don't believe that is here at my ranch, I have 13 horses, and many of them are wild. Some of my wilds do not have any desire to ever be gentled or trained and handled. And some of mine who are very gentled, and we have started them under saddle, they made it very clear that they have no desire to be ridden. And for some reason, I grew up with horses believing that you did have to ride them, and you did have to ride them so many hours a week, and they had to achieve all these different things. And what it did was make me feel really guilty because I didn't have often the time, sometimes the knowledge, sometimes the weather or the health. So that's what we're going to talk about. And I would love to hear from you, Laura. What do you think about the topic?
So, my world in horses started in a horse rescue. And so, the quote unquote, broken souls who were no longer serving their useful purpose of being ridden were my teachers for the first many years of horses. And it was always in the back of my mind, how could you offend? I don't understand. Like, they're teaching me so much. They're so fun to be around. Giving an old horse a bath on a hot day and feeling the appreciation of that soul for you for doing that is just one of the most enjoyable ways to spend your time. And it was always like, why didn't your person want to do that for you? How could they have not seen how cool you are and wanted to keep you when you were past your useful lifespan? And so from the beginning, the agreement between me and a horse has always been, I intend this to be a till death do we part relationship. And, life can get in the way and things can happen. And that's why it has to be an intent and not an absolute. But my ability to ride you or not ride you is never going to be that decision.
We do work in an industry where there are a lot of practices and belief systems that date back far further than any of us who are practicing those beliefs
Mm-hmm.
can even begin to understand what that life was like.
Right.
You know, horses have stood by mankind through so many centuries of tending to the fields and traveling across the unknown terrain to new horizons and worked the cattle and raised the kids. And I think as time evolved, it became a profitable industry. And I think somewhere in that evolution, it was lost. The fact was lost that these horses, centuries ago, that plowed the fields and worked the cattle and traveled across country. They had a job, but I believe, and I don't know why I believe this, but I believe that they were valuable members of the family.
Yeah.
They were valued. They weren't a tool.
And I think we believe that because of what we see in photos and paintings and storytelling, right?
Yeah. And then there was the realization that you could make money off of horses. And then started the whole, well, they have to be trained and they have to be fit and they have to be this and they have to be that. And then we get into the industry in different industries where they're making money, but that's not where we're going with this. But that's where I'm kind of thinking like, when did it become normal mindset that if you have a horse, you better be riding it,
Yeah.
or you should just get rid of it? Did that concept come in because you're spending money on a horse? It shouldn't just be sitting because you got a horse because you wanted to ride.
Or is it all of a sudden we've assigned a value in our head to a horse and that horse isn't owning up to its value unless it's being ridden?
And so, what is accomplished when you ride it? Well, there's hours under the saddle, so maybe they're more trustworthy, they're more physically fit, they might be more agile to do what you want to do with them. So it kind of
Right.
comes back to what you want to do with them,
And that can be whatever the hell you want.
right?
Like, and it's really funny that you and I are having this conversation about you don't have to ride your horse, but there is a belief system out there that a lot of people have that if you aren't showing and competing your horse is useless and you shouldn't have it, which just blows my mind.
Right. Well, I come across a lot of people who are really down on themselves when they don't work their horse 3 to 4 times a week. But there's this belief that my horse isn't healthy unless he's muscularly fit in the way that the trainer's eyes see the horse should be developed, which can only be done under saddle or collected on the ground.
It's just amazing that we're talking about this right now because it has been on my mind that MJ is not in as good of shape going into winter that I wish she was. I had a baby. But all that being said, in the pursuit of having that baby, MJ and I walked and walked and walked and walked on flat ground, but hiking trails. And we've been able to continue to do that a little bit as baby has gotten big enough to go in a wrap and I can walk with them again. And I was comparing photos of her a year ago versus right now. She is in way better shape. She looks way better right now than she did a year ago. And I haven't ridden my horse. I've ridden my horse 4 times this summer.
Well, and your horse was rehabbing.
Right,
Your horse had an injury.
right. I
I
just don't
guess
think that
my
we have to ride
question,
them to keep them physically fit.
exactly. My
Yeah.
question to you is what what kind of shape do you want to see her in going into winter? I know what I'm looking for right now in my herd, which I have 13 and ride 3.
Right.
But every single one of them, I have an expectation of what they should look like going into winter.
Yeah, I want a well-developed butt, a strong shoulder, a supported back. That's where she's not holding her back up. She's not using her thoracic sling quite as well as I wish she was, but that's been a year-long journey and I see improvement. Like years-long journey and I see improvement. I don't see ribs. She's actually probably carrying a little bit more fat than I ever seen her have, but there's good muscle underneath it, and she has historically been a hard keeper through the winter, so I don't mind that right now because I know as soon as the temperature drops, her metabolism is going to kick up like crazy, and I'm going to have trouble keeping weight on her.
But there's solutions for all that.
And none of it requires getting on her.
So, I think about like the wilds that I have, and I think about the wilds in the wild,
Mhm.
which is different because they travel. You know,
Yeah.
like all my smallest pasture here is an acre, maybe a half acre. But when you hear about all the things you're looking for, a strong butt, a thoracic sling that needs to be more developed, the shoulders, all of those things, if she's lacking that going into winter, is that going to make or break her?
Let's pause for a moment. Have you ever looked at your horse and wondered if they're thriving in your care? Is there more you can do to give them the best life possible? Most ranches and boarding facilities are set up for convenience, not horse health, but there's tons you can do to fix your horse's situation if you're willing to get creative. Join Evidence-Based Horsekeeping, my Facebook group where members learn how to improve the mental and physical well-being of their horses. The link is in the show notes. Well, and she's a special case. She's not a sound horse.
Right.
And so that's where my concern comes in because if we're not using our back correctly because our bone spurs are bothering us, we're more likely to tear our tendon again. And that makes me nervous. If she was a sound horse with no concernable issues, I wouldn't be worried at all.
But like you said, you can fix all that without
Well,
getting her back.
yes.
So, we could be talking apples and oranges because she's out to pasture, mine are out to pasture, but these horses that live in stalls and paddocks where their only activity is either being turned out loose in an arena or being ridden. And so in those particular situations,
I would say it's important that they go exercise with them in some way.
right, that's what I was
Yeah.
thinking of you and
Yeah.
I was thinking of you and MJ while she was rehabbing, you were pregnant. You timed that very well, by the way. Um, And I was thinking of the babies that I've had here,
Yeah.
or the ones who, for whatever reason, I decide we're loading up in the trailer and we're actually going for a hike. And I'm not riding you, I'm hiking you. We're going together,
Yeah.
you know, or um, if you're at a boarding facility and you have a trailer, how many times have you actually thought about getting out and walking your horse? Like right now, I'm doing this 30 miles, 30 days to stop soldier suicide challenge. And Whiskey was supposed to be the one, but he's super lame. And so I'm like, okay, I'll take our
Whiskey's
duvet
a
dog.
dog, just throwing that in there. Whiskey's a dog.
Whiskey's a dog. And then we have Kane, who is a yellow lab we call our duvet dog. Because he's pretty happy just being on the duvet all day. And so he's out hiking with me. And then I thought this morning while I was out there watching the sun come up, I was like, I should bring Rocky out here for a hike, or I should bring
Mhm.
Katniss out one morning and we should just hike, and she would really like that. We did that the whole time from the time she was 6 months old until she was like 4. We went everywhere together. And I didn't pony her because I didn't have a horse that wouldn't kick her. And she's also had her broken neck, so I
Right, so you
can't
had to be
like be
super careful
pony.
of her. Yeah.
Yeah. So where are we going with this?
I think we're just saying that you don't have to ride your horse to have a healthy horse or to be, I mean, it's kind of a to be worthy horse person, but that seems, I'll just share an opinion.
Okay.
If I see a person who's determined to compete with their horse, and that horse is super unregulated in fight or flight, having a miserable time, I don't have a lot of respect for that person as a horse person.
I agree.
If I see a person who has a horse that they love, they haven't ridden that horse in a decade, but them and that horse have a slow, quiet routine of grooming and care and walks. I have immeasurable respect for that person as a horse person. And you can take my opinion or leave it, but it's not about riding.
No, it's about the soul. It's about the relationship. I agree 100%. For the past 20 years, I've done a lot of equine assisted work, which there's no riding involved.
Right.
And today, Rocky, my new Gypsy Vanner quarter horse cross, who I've ridden, we have a lot of fun, but I haven't done a lot of groundwork with him because he's so well trained. And I have this new client who I just adore, and she rides English, but she wants to learn the horse, right? She wants to learn from the
Wow.
inside out. And I'm like, we're going to start with Rocky because I just want to see what he does. And I've learned so much about him just having her in there with him at Liberty and me in there. But today we were doing a lot of self work, self awareness, being in your body, being present. And that horse came over and was standing, joined us, and started doing so much yawning and deep breathing and sighing, and his eyes were kind of rolling back. He was doing so much energetic releasing. And I just stopped and I looked at him, and she goes, "Is he all right?" And I said, "Yeah, he's just releasing." And so we explained, right? Because she
Yeah.
wants to learn about the horse. And what I was wondering was, it didn't feel like I was releasing a lot, and it didn't feel like my client in the moment was releasing a lot. And so I was looking at Rocky and I realized he's never done this kind of energy work. And he has a ton of stuff from his trip from Southern California to getting to me that he was actually releasing. And then we ended up doing Liberty work with him, and he just displayed all kinds of valuable information for her that reflected on her and how she sees life and how she deals with her own self, the inner critic and all of that. And he never had a halter or lead rope on. It was all in the round pen. So I think because we just want to ride, that so many of us don't realize that there's so much more to them.
So much more to them.
Yeah. And I love that she's taking, English writing lessons. I don't know how many times a week, but every week. And I loved that she was like, nobody's taught me about the horse.
Yeah. And she
I know
said,
how to
well,
tack them. I know how to halter them and groom them, and I'm learning how to ride them, but I don't know what they're saying.
yeah. And I think that when we're riding, we can bring a lot of like fear and restriction into reading our horse because the need to control is more there.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're on the ground, you can really just relax and see them. And that's so important before you step in the saddle to be able to read your horse and know what they're thinking.
Yeah, yeah. And that working on the ground with them, being able to learn how to communicate with them and how are they communicating back. I didn't always do groundwork. It wasn't until 2000 that I really started learning and doing groundwork. And so we're what, 24 years later, and I'm better. I'm a lot better, but I still have a long way to go. But I am so amazed at the understanding I have now that if we can't communicate with our horses and help them understand how to go out on the circle, back up, do an 8 pattern, walk together harmoniously, go over obstacles. If we can't figure out how to communicate and do that together as a team on the ground, what in our silly little brains tells us that as soon as we take our feet off the ground,
It's gonna go well.
It's going to go better. They're totally going to understand us. And I just marvel at that. I marvel at that because it's a relationship and a partnership, and you have to be able to understand and communicate. I mean, if you and I are building something together, like we're building our podcast
Podcast.
business together, and if you and I can't communicate with each other and have a mutual understanding of our goal and how we're going to achieve it, then we're both wasting a lot of time and probably bumping heads more than we are working
Yeah,
together, right?
100%. Yeah.
So why do we think it's different with a big old 1,000-pound
I
animal?
know. Yeah. You can do whatever you want with your horse as long as you and your horse are happy. And
Hmm.
you get to determine what is worthy and what isn't.
Yeah. I think the key thing is as long as you and your horse are happy.
And that
And
comes back to awareness. You got to be able to look at your horse and know if they're happy or not.
right.
Right now, my rides are I ask MJ before I ride every time, do you want to ride today or not? It's about 50-50 on whether she says yes or whether she says no. And that's okay.
Right.
And asking her, if you're wondering what the heck that looks like, I pull my saddle pad out and I show her, hey, here's a saddle pad. And she either touches it with her nose and pricks her ear up or she looks away and is totally disinterested. It's that easy.
Yep. And I think that might spark a lot of, well, your horse shouldn't get to decide. You're letting your horse be the boss. And I think both of our responses to that would be, no, that's what we call a partnership.
Yeah. Yeah. She's
Because,
moving her body in one way or another every time I see her.
right.
Like,
And I think part of owning a horse is the opportunity to awaken playfulness
yeah.
and your imagination
Yeah.
and curiosity and creativity. How can I be active with my horse today in a way that makes it fun for both of us? And what's fun about that approach is that when horses love to play games and they love to solve problems, just watch them. Just put a toy out there, or those little Houdinis who love to figure, oh, new latch, sweet. How long will this take
Put
me?
their lips on every inch of everything they can find.
They love to play and solve problems. And so when you come out there with that playful approach, like, all right, here's a big ball, here's 4 cones and some poles and a jolly ball or something, they've never seen before. What are we going to do with it? Well, if you get used to playing with your horse like that, oh my goodness, they will often tell you
Yeah.
what they want to do and come up with new things to do. So I think what we're trying to really say in all of this, everybody, like Laura said, it's okay to have a horse and not ride them.
Yeah.
And it's okay to have a horse and ride when you feel like riding, or your horse feels like being ridden. And no time with your horse, no time with your horse is wasted time.
No time is wasted time. Today, I drove out 45 minutes. I pulled MJ out of the pasture. I had to feed the baby. The baby fed for about possibly the longest feed she'd ever had, like 40 minutes. So we all sat around while that happened. I trimmed MJ's frogs and I thought, wow, it feels pretty hot. And I looked at my phone. Sure enough, it was almost 90 degrees. I have to get this baby out of the heat. I fed MJ. I put her back. I drove 45 minutes home. And had I known that going in, I still would have gone.
And MJ loved it.
Yes, she was perfectly happy to stand there while we sat in an armchair and sat in a camping chair and fed. So, guys, you can do whatever you want with your horse as long as you and your horse are happy. And nobody gets to define whether or not that's a worthy relationship or if your horse is worth it or anything like that.
It's like any relationship in your life. Open heart, open mind, and you be you. So if you have any questions about the topics covered in this episode, send us a message on our Facebook page, Holistic Horsemanship and Husbandry, and we will answer your question in a post on our page. You will be anonymous. We'll just take the question and provide our input, and we want to do it on the post so that we can all learn and grow together, because nobody knows everything. Thank you for tuning in to another episode. We want to remind you that we'll be here every second and fourth Tuesday of the month, following the golden rule. Have a plan, but always be willing to be flexible. Don't forget to connect with us using the links in the show notes below.
If you learned something new today, had an aha, or walked away with a valuable nugget, you can say thanks by leaving us a 5-star review on whatever platform you're listening on.